Yeah, but we were owned property by men.
No, you weren't owned property. It's ridiculous.
There's not a point in human history where women have been property of men.
What's wrong with that system? That's a good system. We need women to provide children. Nobody else can provide children except women.
We're in overpopulation.
Actually,
already.
we're not.
Wait, what could possibly be more important than being a mother? There's nothing you could ever do in your life that's more important.
So for a man, it's more important for him to be a father.
Name one thing you could do that's more important than being a mother.
God, being a good one.
That makes no... What?
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. In this video, we are going to be watching Andrew Wilson from the Crucible YouTube channel debating a few young feminist ladies on the Whatever podcast. I wanted to cover this because a few of the points raised shine a light on some very important issues that often fly under the radar. So I'm going to give a little bit of my thoughts in regards to that. And also, at the end, I'm going to sell to you guys why, as much as these conversations get such a bad rap, why I think they're actually extremely important. So with that, let's get into it.
But I've heard that 93% of our generation, mostly in college, still wants to get married. And that's exactly what we're seeing around this table. So that's just a fascinating observation. I think it's really hopeful.
Are you really seeing it around the table? Because what I'm seeing around the table is a bunch of women who are like, yeah, sure, I'll marry a dude who makes $150,000 a year and pays for all my shit. That sounds a lot different than I'm looking to get married to me.
Who said that?
That sounds different to me.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I'm curious which one of us said that.
Well, so as we're going around the table, right, what do you think that when you say a man who can support himself and is supporting himself and can support a family, if he lives in the Santa Barbara area, what do you think that would take if you had to guess?
Probably over $300,000 a year, but we're not talking about this specific location. We're not including the fact that each of us are, I think everyone around the table is willing to have a 2-income household. Do you agree or do you disagree? I think partnership is everything. My dad and my stepmom, my dad is 16 years older than my stepmom. They've been together for 18 years now. He invested in her company and now she makes more money than him and she's the main provider of our household. I think that
he gave her money for her company and now her
yep, and
company's
she's
doing
paid it
well.
all back. Her company is doing much better, or it's doing well, I mean, and now she makes more money than him and pays his mortgage. And she's also helping me pay for my college. So women can
that's great.
be providers.
That's called dividends. That's called dividends. That's how that works when you invest in a company and it does well. You get money back out of it.
Not everything in life is material, and I think because there are so many ways to make money independently, and I mean, for example, writing your own book and like creating your own platform, I think there's less of a necessity for women to marry solely for money, when in the past and not that long ago we couldn't even have our own credit cards, you know, without the permission of a man.
Yeah, but you also didn't incur any debt. That's why you couldn't have credit cards.
Yeah, but we were owned property by men.
No, you weren't owned property. That's ridiculous.
There's not a point in human history where women have been property of men.
That's not what I said. I said you weren't owned property in this country, ever.
Me personally, no, but...
No women. Women were not.
In the United States, women were never considered legal property of another person.
But if you're don't have body autonomy and you can't make your own income, and you have to rely on being married in order to have any type of social standing.
Women could always make their own income in the United States. Where on earth did you get the idea that they couldn't?
Guys,
did you learn this in Feminist Studies Class 101?
But like white women, like were not really accepted into the working class.
If you want to argue, I'm not saying there was no room for income and that there was no room for any type of sustainable life or women to, you know, create some type of wealth. Until really wartime, women weren't allowed in the workforce, and that was only because there were no men.
Where did you get the idea
where in the workforce were they not allowed?
They were still nurses, they were still teachers,
Guys,
they were still doing all sorts of jobs inside of society. What do you mean?
They were limited
Same types
to
of jobs
domestic
they're doing right now,
role
by the way.
laws.
They were doing hang on, just calm down, relax. They were doing clerical work, they were teaching, they were nursing, they were doing all the same jobs that they're basically doing right now.
Okay, well, there are plenty of women who are moving up in corporate worlds as well as moving up in different sections of
No, there's not very many women who are moving up the corporate ladder in corporate world.
Compared to 50 years ago?
There's so few female CEOs for a reason. They don't gravitate towards that kind of work.
Okay. You're right, I'm wrong. Women are they are only meant to do domestic work.
No, I don't think that's what he's saying.
That's not what I said. That's a mischaracterization. I'm just explaining to you the reality. I don't understand why you're being so aggressive. I haven't been mean to you.
Can I
I'm just
ask
explaining
something?
to you.
Yeah, go for it.
What the reality of the situation is.
Go ahead, and then Isabel will go. Go ahead.
What does this have to do with women not being able to own, like, have their own credit cards or open a bank account in their own
Well,
name?
because women not being able to have bank accounts and credit cards because they weren't allowed to incur debt. And this was great because right now the biggest holders of debt in the United States are women. It's crushing for most women. Before that, men had to incur all the debt. So the wife could go out and spend all of the money that she wanted in her husband's name, and he had to incur the debt even post-divorce. He still had to take care of the debt. She had none of it in her name. This was one of the primary arguments against feminism from the anti-suffragettes, is that they did not want to incur debt. And now women have racked up tons and tons of it.
Guys, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that like button. Helps me out enormously. And also, if you're not subscribed to the channel, if you like this sort of stuff, want to be a part of the community, hit that red button. Back to it.
I mean, basically you're implying that it's good that it's men's responsibility to incur all debt, and I feel like if that were actually the case, then we would be in a different argument where it would be like, well, women suck because women don't incur any debt and we incur all of their debt. So I feel like it's just kind of like a bad faith argument. I don't know.
Well, it's not a bad faith argument. It's just giving a descriptor for why it happened that way. Sure. Why it was that women, and there was far more anti-suffragettes than there were pro-suffragettes, by the way, made very compelling arguments, like they didn't want to get drafted, for instance. They didn't want, see, what the anti-suffragettes said was that women had the moral high ground because they weren't political tools. They weren't political tools because they couldn't vote. So they weren't tapped into as being political tools. So when they said something, they said it from a position of moral authority. They weren't being tapped into. So this is how they were able to argue successfully for things in women's interests without being just considered another voting bloc that needed to be appealed to. When it came to debt and things like this, it is true that women didn't hold they could have bank accounts, by the way, but most of the time when they opened up lines of credit and debt and accounts, it was always in their husband's name, but the husband was also responsible for all of the debt, and the women weren't. And even when the man died, the woman would get his property, but it may not be the same if a woman died, that he would automatically default and get the property. She was able to incur all sorts of wealth for herself and didn't have to spend it.
Do you think that's a more preferable system? Would you like to go back to that financial?
Well, I think it's a more preferable system to begin to move women outside of the workplace. That way we can go back to a family dynamic that works, and we can get the reproductive health of the United States back up, because right now it's in the gutter. I don't know if you know this or not, but it's in the gutter.
So
our birth rate's way low.
Then why would it be a problem for any of us to say we'd like a man who can support a family? Why is that a problem if you think that men should be incurring all the debt and taking on all the financial responsibility? If a woman says, well, I'd like a man who can support a family in Santa Barbara,
well, because
why is that a problem?
this is a cyclical problem. So the problem is if you say, I would love to have a single income support me, but then at the same time not recognize the problem that if you double the workforce, you're going to have the wages of men, that you're basically perpetuating the same issue that you're against.
So that is what we can quite confidently call a mic drop moment. If you, young lady, would like to be with a man that can support you on a single income, yet you yourself are sitting there as some massive proponent of girls to be boss babes, then what we have here is, as Andrew said, a cyclical problem. And it's not just to say that all women should be totally forced out of the workforce tomorrow. I mean, maybe the next day. I'm joking, guys. Definitely joking. It's obviously a joke, so please, ladies, don't email me. I always get ladies emailing me after I do these videos, completely strawmanning my positions. So please save your energy. And the ideal is the nuclear family. It's a two-parent household where the mother looks after the children and the father provides. And I know that situations vary and everybody can't have that set up exactly. But the fact of the matter is that in life, you make sacrifices. You can't have it all as much as Oprah tells you that you can.
As successful, smart, independent, strong women, what price have you paid, both of you, to be where you are? Because we want to be there.
I think it's kind of, I haven't had a baby, but I believe it's like having a baby. You forget that it hurt because you love it so much, you know. So whatever price I have paid I'm so happy about it. I'm so happy.
Oh, don't cry.
And people must make said sacrifices now more than ever, because there is a serious breakdown of the family happening in the West, and it is a disaster. And guess what? Feminism has a very large part to play in this. You see, the modern narrative that is shoved down everyone's throats forcefully is that before the suffragettes marched in the streets and marched for their rights, women were property owned by men and basically just chained to an oven, just stirring gnocchi all day and night. And for somebody who hasn't really looked into this, you might be shocked to realize that this is not the case whatsoever. And you might have seen recently I had Andrew's wife Rachel on the podcast, and we discussed this in detail. And you guys can obviously find the reality-based podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and the rest. But the modern feminist messaging is that women can do whatever a man can do. And it is seen as the highest of status symbols to be a boss babe and to be fighting the patriarchy wherever you can see it.
Shut your mouth. Boy, I think you know who run this house.
Whereas men are being taught to cry about their feelings every 2 minutes. Don't you dare be competitive and masculine or you are toxic. They're being told that they have oppressed women throughout history and started every single war throughout history, and that there is something inherently wrong with masculinity. And as a society at large, we are paying for this. Women are more depressed than ever. Divorce rates are higher than ever. People are lonelier than ever. Hookup culture and casual sex is rampant. Children are growing up with single mothers at alarming rates, which is more likely to lead them to a life of crime and degeneracy.
You grew up without a father. How do you feel like your life would be different if you had grown up with a father?
I'd have had some discipline. I'd have had more confidence.
Men are literally checking out from the dating market, becoming incels, and in some cases even deleting themselves. Church attendance and belief in God is lower than it's ever been. And like Andrew said, our birth rates are in free fall throughout the entire developed world. And if we don't do something about it, then we are staring down the barrel of a catastrophe where there won't be enough young people to support the aging population. You see, there are many indicators these days that we are heading for some sort of a societal collapse. And literally all of these issues, everything that we just named, could be solved more or less by putting the family back together. And it's easier said than done in this modern world, but if people were engaging in a traditional marriage, having families, plugging into a church, a community, and living more ethical lives, then these problems would be at least drastically reduced. And that's what we mean when we say things like the nuclear family is the backbone of our society, and without it, everything crumbles. On to the next.
I think a lot of women are asked to sacrifice more individually than men are on a career scale or on a family scale.
Bullshit.
Family, for example.
What?
So what about the nuclear family is asking women to sacrifice things that the men isn't?
How many men do you know that were ever stay-at-home dads?
My dad, for one, for several years of my childhood.
Statistically. Huh?
No.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm just saying there is an expectation on women, from whether it's a natural perspective or an evolved perspective. Women bear children for a duration of 9 to 10 months. They have to take care of them biologically post-birth, whether it's through breastfeeding or other acquisitions. And I think because of those biological factors, we have been forced more into the nurturing role in a social sphere as well. Because of the actual biological factor of being a childbearing woman, not that all women are, I think there is a standard in our society that women are these nurturing roles. And that reflects in the careers that you proclaim that women succeed the most in.
But hold on, I'm going back to something about the stay-at-home fathers.
When you consider the fact that even if you look in the court of law, even when the mother is the unfit parent, the court of law in a divorce case will always favor the woman getting custody.
Sounds like a female privilege, doesn't it?
I mean, if having to deal with kids, 3 screaming children on your own is a privilege to you, maybe. But I think that aspect of female privilege was created by
if there's
the
a custody,
patriarchy.
if there's a custody dispute, somebody's desirous of having custody.
None of us are arguing that men don't have problems in dating. I'm not saying that it's ethical that men are expected to be providers, but when you create a system in which there is a historical aspect where women were meant to provide children and essentially sex to men, a man provides his own service. That is his service of taking care of his family.
That system, what's wrong with that system? That's a good system. We need women to provide children. Nobody else can provide children except women.
We're in overpopulation.
Actually,
already.
we're not. We are approaching population decline
rapidly
around the globe.
We're in decline across the board. Not only are we in decline across the board, but if you look at some of the Asian nations like South Korea, for instance, it's not even 1-to-1 for replacement. If you look at Japan, right now, they're about to have a crisis where they have more elderly people than they have young people to take care of the elderly people.
The 50 most powerful countries in the world actually cannot replace their current population.
So my question becomes this to you, right? My question becomes, why is this a bad system? Why do you think that it's bad that women are moved by society to stay at home and take care of their children? Why do you think that that's bad? That seems to be the most efficient system. Could you even think of a better system? Tell me, if you could come up with your dream system, what would it even be other than that?
My dream system, I can't wait to have children. I love children. Personally, it's never been a question for me. I can't wait to have children. I love children. I work with kids a bunch, and I think it's such a great blessing, motherhood. Not that everyone needs it, but for me personally. So I'm not at all anti-children, but I'm just I personally would love to have a family and have that dynamic.
So you actually can't think of a better system than that.
So she is speaking loud and speaking a lot. But if you're able to muster the willpower to listen closely to what she's actually saying, it is pure chaos. Some of her points. Women sacrifice more than men when it comes to family, because basically the men get to enjoy the great privilege of going out and working themselves to death to provide for their families, which has been the case for 99% of men throughout history. Women are essentially oppressed by their biology. God forbid they have to actually bear children. And this is just Feminist 101 propaganda brainwashing. That motherhood and the family actually oppresses women. And unfortunately, guys, these are ideas that have been adopted en masse, and we're seeing the fruits of it here. And she showed it again when she said that women winning custody battles in court where they get access to their children or full custody of their children, I mean, somehow winning that legal battle is a bad thing. I mean, just try telling that to all of the men that have had their kids ripped away from them and can't see them anymore. But once again, guys, this is the brainwashing. This is the feminist contempt for children and seeing them as an oppressive force that holds the mother back. She's basically just regurgitating the points of some pretty prominent 20th century feminists here. And the feminist literature and ideas that she is regurgitating, whether she knows it or not, is pretty easy to find. And the following quotes go to show just how dark this ideology is. Simone de Beauvoir said, "As long as the family and the myth of the family have not been destroyed, women will still be oppressed." Kate Millett says, "The complete destruction of the nuclear family is the revolutionary or utopian goal of feminism." At least she's honest about it. Linda Gordon says, "The nuclear family must be destroyed, whatever its ultimate meaning. The breakup of families now is an objectively revolutionary process." Well, I mean, they've made some serious inroads into their goals. So how's all that liberation going, ladies? And this is why it's important to have these ideas taken apart and destroyed in public and on a big platform like this. Because oftentimes, these ideas go completely unchallenged. And this is really bad because now there is a whole entire generation of young ladies coming through the ranks that think that men are their enemies. And they're offended by the idea that men and women are different and that we both have our different strengths and together we're actually complementary. And this attitude is one that's likely to deprive them of some of the great joys in life. So let's go to the last bit.
In my ideal world, I would love to have a partner who would go true 50-50 with me on caring for the children as well as working as much as I work. Obviously,
well,
if my
I mean,
partner...
if he's working, but if you had the ideal system, wouldn't your ideal system actually be that you could spend all of your time with your children while your husband worked?
Because I would like the equal sacrifice in my relationship where I love children. I can't wait to be a mother, but I don't need to be the sole provider of my children for 24 hours a day. I would love to have a partnership where they are more than willing to help me, feed, take care of the children if I need a day.
But how's that equal if he's working?
Because I could work as well. There's so many different ways.
So this brings us back to the original question then. Is your time better spent working, or is your time better spent at home with your children, not outsourcing their care to somebody else while you're working? So for instance, let's say you had a baby, little Samantha. Do you think that little Samantha wants to go and get taken care of by some Venezuelan immigrant while you go work all day? Do you think that that's preferable?
I had an au pair growing up. She was a Haitian au pair, and she was one of the most beautiful, amazing women, and I never felt like it took away from my experience with my mother.
You preferred that over your mom?
I never felt like it took away from my experience with my mother.
That's not what I asked you. Did you prefer it over your own mother?
Probably.
Really? You preferred that this
my mother? Not every woman is a great
mother.
Mother. Not every woman can be a great mother. Not every man can be a great father. And I think the family system.
So outsource your kids.
You don't have to.
That's your big plan.
If I am in a position in which I can adjust work hours or take time off of work or make sure my schedule aligns, or take off work until my children are in school and only work during school hours, etc., I find that to be not a problem at all.
Andrew, can you center?
I know. I understand what you're saying, but let me give it back to you one more time. Why do you think it would be preferable if you had the option to stay at home to outsource your mothering to a stranger of your children? In what world does that make sense?
I'm not saying that I would have to do it to a stranger of my children. Everyone has different relationship dynamics, different financial statuses, maybe I have my parents are able to help take care, or my sister, which is a very natural part of human.
Or maybe nobody. Or maybe the daycare, right?
Or
don't you think it's preferable for women to avoid the daycare?
If you want to ask the question and you want my answer, do you want me to answer?
Well, your answers are really long-winded.
Okay, fine. I will do short and sweet.
Yeah.
I want to love my children in every way that I can, and I want to be an amazing mother. And I think if I spend my entire time losing my identity as an individual and only seeing myself as a mother, I will not be able to provide.
What do you mean only? Wait, what could possibly be more important than being a mother? There's nothing you could ever do in your life that's more important.
So for a man, it's more important for him to be a father.
Name one thing you could do that's more important than being a mother.
God, being a good one.
That makes no That makes no sense.
That makes sense.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
What?
That makes complete sense.
Also, I might be misunderstanding the conversation, but also...
Wait, hang on. I just want to make sure I got this right. What's more important than being a mother? Okay, being a good mother. Okay, great. What's more important than being a good mother?
Nothing.
Nothing. Being a good mother,
I will take every step in my life to assure that I can be a good mother, whether that's working, whether that's maybe
by
needing a
outsourcing
nanny.
it to the Venezuelan immigrant. Yeah, your daycare.
What's wrong with a Venezuelan immigrant?
Plan.
Maybe she lives at home with me and she's an amazing woman.
I mean, do you consider yourself, is his name Andrew?
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, do you consider yourself like a traditional person? Like, would you say that a traditional mindset?
No, I don't consider myself trad or what is considered to be trad in modernity at all. I never have. I don't think we should go back to the 1950s or any of this nonsense. What I'm saying specifically, though, is this, that there is no better system that any of you can name than the nuclear family for the backbone of society. That's going to require stay-at-home mothers. There's nothing else that's better than that. We see the population declining. It's falling off like a rock. And so when I ask, what is it that's more important than being a good mother at home, none of you are going to be able to say that that's not the most important job. And yet, for some reason, women seem to want to outsource that job to other people, even though it's theirs. Husband can work, take care of you, you stay home. No, I have aspiring dreams that surmount being a mother when there's nothing else you could do that's more important than that.
So not much sense being made there. And guys, these podcasts, especially whatever, oftentimes gets a really bad rap because they say that they have these young, naive girls on who don't really know what they're talking about, and they get older, more good-looking and intelligent guys like myself and Andrew, for that matter, to come in and destroy their worldview. And whilst that does happen, I would totally disagree that this is a bad thing. What people have to realize is the ideologies being espoused by these young ladies are the mainstream liberal feminist ideologies of the modern day. And however they are articulated, there are a lot of people who watch these episodes and watch these clips and are able to see them destroyed. And I've done 5 episodes of this podcast and I've got a few more coming up. And I can tell you that it's not all just incel men watching these podcasts. There are many, many young women watching these shows. Young women who inherently kind of know that they don't align with these ideologies, but in their own personal life, for whatever reason, they're probably too scared to speak up. I mean, who dare cross the feminists? But I mean, these are young women who would like to find a strong, traditional, masculine guy, a guy whose lead she can follow, someone who's not a beta wokey and wants to provide for a family one day so that she can focus on being a mother. And if you haven't noticed, in these panel dynamics, these are the type of women that get pedestalized, whereas they stigmatize sex work and liberal hedonism and hookup culture and feminism. And this, as far as I can see, is a very effective tool, and it'll help young women to be more openly based. And not just because they're confronted with these facts, but also because they're realizing that the kinds of men that they might be interested in, the aforementioned man, is going to look for a woman who's more modest, has nice values, respects men, loves children, pursues faith, and unequivocally chooses family over career. And maybe it's just me, guys, but these days I'm seeing a lot more young ladies with crosses and Bible verses in their social media bios. And for what it's worth, I think that's a positive trend. Let's keep that trend going. And as much of the time these podcasts aren't of the taste of conservatives, sometimes you have to meet culture where it is. And sometimes these sorts of platforms that reach far and wide, where these bad ideas that are so pernicious and so pervasive can be destroyed and bad behavior can be stigmatized, is a really positive thing. So looking forward to reading all of your thoughts below, guys. And if you'd like to find my links, socials, they're going to be right down there. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel here, and if you would like to watch another video, of course, click right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is RattlesnakeTV, keeping you armed and dangerous.